time to say a few words about the jewel box itself. There are different possible ways you can lift corners of a jewel box. The simplest way is by means of printed cotton. However, here on this box I failed while twisting the corners. It has taken time and effort to smoothen them. If you take a thorough look, you can see the drawbacks. That's why I've given up this method. It's too difficult to perform everything neatly and to avoid any failures. Another method I've tried, and I like it, is with the help of double crochet. One more way is by means of a standard rope. I'm going to show it to you as well. So far, let's get to know a very interesting technique, lifting the corners with the help of beads. I'm creating a gift souvenir set, complete with a small jewel box and this large one. I've tied a woven circle to a square basic form. The next stage is lifting corners with the help of beads. I've calculated the bead size to make them more or less identical. But it is rather difficult to make a line smooth this way. That's why I made both bigger and smaller beads and used them in turns. I've made them of standard textured surface wallpaper. For a big bead I use a stripe 20 cm, 2 cm wide and 30 cm long, about 0.8 inch wide and 12 inches long. I've drawn a diagonal line and now I'm cutting the stripe along this line. I'm going to make 2 large beads of this stripe. For smaller beads, I use a stripe 1.5 cm wide, about 0.6 inch. Since the beads are going to be small, I'm bending the stripe and making 4 beads of it. I'm trying to cut it without a line drawn. The line is shorter, so it is easier this time, but the principle is the same, cut along a diagonal line. One stripe is sufficient for making 4 beads. As for a bead itself, you can roll it this way. Here I've got dragon glue mixed with water. You can paint such beads right away. But if you are going to create a lot of beads at a time, you'd better make a special tool. This bead is small. For making big beads, I use a device like this. I've made it of materials at hand, a plastic card used as a support, first of all, I press a stripe into a special hole, after which I cover a stripe with glue and enjoy the process. I believe every experienced weaver has tried rolling beads. As for beginners, a piece of advice can be useful for them. Take a bead off, it is ready. This is a large bead. It doesn't take long for dragon glue to dry, so by the time you finish rolling the last bead, you can start painting them. I've used the remainder of solution left after painting the tubes to paint the beads. To avoid overusing your attention, let me show you the way I apply them. I've used 3 big beads for the very corner and 3 smaller ones next to them. 2 big beads and 2 smaller ones. 1 big bead, 1 small bead. As a result, you reach the level of a round bottom lifted. Further, you can weave in a standard rope-like technique in circle. Weave up to the top of the base form or up to the required height. The first way of lifting corners was beads. Now let me show you the second way, my favorite one. Lifting corners by means of a standard rope. So I woven a circle, tied it to my base form. My base is somewhat peculiar. I bought this construction set specifically for making weaving forms. However, it doesn't hold together strong enough, so I have to fix it with the help of a painter's tape. I've got 2 tubes in each corner. So I start weaving in a normal rope-like technique, every time engaging one more following tube. At first I've hugged 2 tubes, then I lead working tubes round. Round the neighboring pole. Then I turn the working tubes round and get the following tube involved. Try your best to get as close to the corner as possible. Sometimes I fail to finish a corner at the end of a square. This time it has gotten a bit too big, but anyway, we are approaching to our form. Try to get closer to it. Grab the next tube. You are weaving incomplete rows. It's time to lengthen the tube. I insert 1 tube into another deep enough and do without any glue this time, as I'm not going to twist that item much. Here is the next neighboring pole. Let's have a look. I've almost reached the required height. Or not yet. Let's make 1 more turn. Engage the following tube and that'll do. I twist the tubes like this and leave these poles unengaged so far. After I finish all the corners, I'm going to continue working with them. And weave each corner this way, in a standard rope-like technique with turns using incomplete rows. Those who've caught the idea from the first time may miss this part, but I know from my experience that repetition is always useful. So I put a loop onto 2 poles and lead the tube ends round the next pole. Turn around, hug the central 2 tubes and engage the neighboring pole. If you remember, we've got a handle woven in a very similar technique. The difference is, in this case, we engage 1 more neighboring pole in each following row. Turn around. Standard rope-like technique, but in complete rows. Lengthen the tube deeply and continue. The tubes were wet, but they've got dry already, so we can moisten them once again. Turn around. The tubes tend to bend, but it's only while we are weaving a corner. Afterwards they'll get straight. Turn around once again. Let's compare our current corner with the first one. Here is a central pole. 1, 2, 3 poles have been engaged beside the central tube. 1, 2, 3, this side is finished. So make one more turn and leave the tubes for complete rows. The corners lifted this way look rather plain. Double crochet and beads look much more decorative, but this method is rather practical too. It is actually the easiest one. It's up to you to choose the way you like most of all. You can apply printed cotton weave as well. For example, Natalia Shevchenko leaves the corners by means of printed cotton, after which she continues weaving rope style. So you can continue weaving in any possible technique you like. The second corner is lifted. There are 2 more corners left, after which you continue weaving complete rows and circle. So all the 4 corners have been woven. I've straightened the top. It's very convenient to make the top line smooth and straight if you follow horizontal lines of a construction set. Now let me show you why it is very practical to use a thin elastic. Now when it's time to lift the base, I can take elastic out easily. You can leave the base without breaking the item. Take elastic out. Since I've woven a few rows already, they are going to hold the base. Let me show you the third way you can leave the corners and add a couple of words on how to calculate a workpiece size. I've decided to decorate the item with such stripes. So we have to decide on a stripe size and where to start it. Here is my square base form. I weave a round workpiece and put a form onto it. Now I see that my colorful stripe starts where a square form finishes. Look, here a stripe starts where a base finishes, and from this side as well. Unfortunately, I don't know how to explain it mathematically. So here a square base finishes. Optimal width of a stripe is up to the corner. Distance from a square side up to a square corner is approximately like this. Here I've woven it a bit wider. I've got too fascinated by the process. In case you finish a circle right at the corner, you get a perfect square and you don't have to make it narrower. In this case, I made it good. Here I've got a narrow stripe as well. As for this box, I've made a stripe a bit wider. That's why I've had to shape the item narrower toward the top. If you take a thorough look, you'll see that the corners are a bit broader than they are supposed to be. So, an internal circle is up to the square side, and an external circle is up to the square corner. Now, when the workpiece has been woven, I lift the circle edges and fix the form with the help of elastic. It will be easier this way. Try it on once again and fix by means of elastic. The only inconvenience about this model is necessity to fix both the cover and the very box with elastic. But actually you have to do it only once and then you can take it out easily. So I cannot call it a serious problem. Just a peculiarity of this shape. You'd better fix it with a few layers. It is easier weaving like this. Well, you can fix it with several short pieces of elastic, but I've taken a single long piece. And one more coil in order to fix it thoroughly. I believe it's enough. Fix and tie strongly. You can use the elastic and the whole elastic and just hide the ends inside of a base, it's up to you. Now smoothen everything, take the tubes pressed by elastic out. Find the center. Be careful here, you can sprinkle the item. I personally don't, because I don't want my poles to become soft, otherwise it would be hard to weave with them. Do you see why I haven't cut the tails right away? If I did, they would slide out at this stage. I'm going to cut them late, after priming. This way I straighten the tubes and prepare them for lifting the corners. This time I'm going to lift corners using the third method, double crochet. The idea is to make a loop every time at the corner. Then weave a complete row in the rope-like technique. If you've noticed, here I've got different tubes left from my previous experiments with thickness of tubes. These very tubes are rather empty. So I reach the next corner, make a loop, and continue weaving in a standard way. The idea is to fill the corner with such double crochet in every next row. At first I make one loop around one central pole. In the next row I engage two neighboring poles. Let me show you the way I do. So I've reached the second row. In the first row I've made one loop. In the current one I'm wrapping two neighboring poles. It's time to lengthen. It's rather inconvenient to lengthen the pole right at the corner. It's probably worth adding some glue. In this row I've got 3 loops. In the next row there will be 5 of them. I'm not sure yet if it is worthwhile weaving a row with 7 loops. It will depend on how close I will approach to the top level. And continue weaving the following rows, pressing closer to the form. Let me add a couple more words about the tubes. These ones are not my best ones. I've mentioned already that I've experimented with the tube's thickness while rolling them. Now, when I'm using these experimental tubes, I see they are worse than thin tubes, and the way the weaving looks is worse too. Look, the thinner and denser the tubes are, the nicer the weaving looks. Here you can see it as well. Thin tubes appeal to me much more. Oh, look at these tubes, they are thin too. Currently I'm weaving with old experimental tubes, but anyway they have to be used too. I can feel the difference very well while weaving. So I emphasize once again that I like thin and tight tubes much better. Even if you weave a large and massive item with thick tubes, you'd better roll the tubes of wide stripes of paper, otherwise your tubes will be too hollow. The item woven with tight tubes look much neater. So I reach the next corner. Here I've got 5 loops already. And I see that I haven't reached the required height yet. That's why I'm making yarns over 7 poles of this corner. At the same time, try your best to get as close to the base as possible. 1, 2, 3. This central tube to the corner. I can hardly avoid lengthening here. Insert one tube into another very deep, because the joint is right in the loop. One, 2, lengthen again, this is a central tube. 1, 2, one more. And the same here. There is only one unengaged pole left. And so on, 7 loops in each corner. Now I see that I've made yarns over 7 poles already, but haven't straightened the top line yet. That's why I continue at the same time decreasing the number of loops. I'm weaving a standard rope around this pole and making yarns over 5 poles at the corner. In the next row I'm going to make 5 loops in the corner, and I hope it will be enough to smoothen the top line. What is interesting about this method is that we don't only lift corners but continue weaving the following rows at the same time. We weave wave-like rows. Here the weaving is tight, while at the corners it is rather airy. And a couple of words about these decorative stripes. I've got the idea of this cover from Olga at vk.com social network. I liked it a lot cause it's rather universal. I faced a lot of challenges while starting to weave covers. I've usually made them either too big or too small. In this case, you can always weave a cover to fit any square box, cause you tie it to the box and press it as much as you need. Thanks a lot to Olga for the idea. As for these decorative stripes, there are several possible ways to create them. You can outline them with a pattern like here or here. Or you can create the stripes by means of decoupage. As an option, you can just create stripes of a different color. This box is decorated with decoupage as well. I'm creating a set of souvenirs decorated with a picture named "Chickens are out there on the lawn." I've used motley newspaper tubes to symbolize spring greenery. This stripe is supposed to be decorated with chickens on the lawn too. This is what concerns decorative stripes. So all the items are completed. Before I finish the talk on newspaper tubes flexibility, I'd like to add that you can make a cover convex shaped thanks to flexibility of material too. You just weave a standard circle. For a flat cover, I've just tied it to the box. In order to get a dome-shaped cover, I've put packs of grain into the box. I put the amount of grain sufficient to create some bulge. The rest of the process is identical to weaving a flat cover. I moisten a lid, prime both sides of it with cool glue mixed with a bit of water. Press a cover to the box tightly and tie it in the same very way. Thanks to the hip on top, I've got a lid curved not inwards like my first covers were, but rather curved outwards. I personally like such covers much more. As for handles, they have nothing to do with our topic of flexibility. So, thanks a lot once again to everyone whose ideas I have made use of. I will share the link to their works in the article. I wish you to enjoy further flight of imagination and successful experiments. Good luck to all of you!